Welcome to another Indie Dev Showcase here on the channel, highlighting the many dev-submitted games and demos we play. If you'd like to submit a game for a future piece, please get in touch. But we are starting off with the game Until We Die. This is a kind of a kingdom-style strategy / building game, where we have to survive in these tunnels, where every few days waves of evil mutants come and try to kill us. The building positions are fixed, and as you spread out either left, right, you'll be able to unlock different services, different characters, etc. Your main limitations in this game are going to be the resources and food that you're going to have to supply people with in order to get more workers and characters who can be then upgraded to different classes. Now, as the game goes on, you'll be able to set up advanced defenses, and the map itself, at least in the version that I played, is linear. So positions of major resources and events are going to be fixed. The unknown factor is that as the game goes on, you're going to be able to choose specific upgrades that can affect one class or affect the overall stability of your camp. And your mission is to survive all the way through to the end of the campaign, in which you then get a mega event of all manner of mutants trying to kill you. Now, the concept of the game I think is really well done. I like the pixel art as well as just the general animations and stylings of it. But the problem I have with this game, much like with the whole Kingdom style design, is that because everything is fixed in terms of resources and where you have to go, it really hurts the variance of play. The upgrades that you can choose are powerful, yes, but it's not changing your moment to moment. It's not changing your overall game plan. And this is one of those games where the second you start to lose, you're going to find it very difficult to pull out of that downward spiral, because characters only come back at the start of each new day, provided you have the resources to pay for them. So one really bad loss during a nightly encounter, and that's it. And you're going to need to set things up in a very specific way, especially if you're playing this on normal and higher, if you want to have any chance at surviving. The game also lost some points at launch for the fact that it was released without an in-game save feature, and they've been promoting additional maps and characters, which I don't know if they're in the game just yet. And overall, while I did enjoy Until We Die, it just kind of, I think, loses the long-term appeal of wanting to keep playing it, despite having some very light, persistent elements. We now turn to Fearmonium. This is a kind of Hollow Knight-esque Metroidvania, where we play as a phobia of clowns inside a child's mind, and we're trying to become like the most biggest and baddest, I guess, phobia of them all. Now, from a story perspective, the game deals with a lot in terms of trauma and depression, so kind of a fair warning for people who may not want to play a game that goes that dark. It does have a happy ending if you pursue it all the way. But this is a Metroidvania, like I said, very similar in terms of its structure to a game like Hollow Knight, where you'll explore, you'll get a new movement tech, and then you'll push forward to one of the game's myriad of bosses and encounters. In terms of the Metroidvania design itself, the game offers a lot of different upgrades and abilities for you to go for, and your structure is going to be exploring each area to find the bosses. When the boss has been defeated, you'll move on to the next area, and there's going to be a lot of backtracking, especially if you want to get all the major upgrades. And in fact, if you want to get the true ending, this becomes required, as the final boss can only be hurt if you find essentially the collection of all of her weak points that are hidden throughout the game. In terms overall of the design, I did like Fearmonium. We played it all the way through to the end. It does feel a little bit, I guess, unpolished in a few areas, such as in terms of trying to find all the various things, a lot of backtracking, and some of the boss fights can definitely feel difficult. All in all, I would say while this is not the best Metroidvania that I played, I still enjoyed it all the way through. And if you are a fan of Metroidvania design and 2D side-scrolling, I would give this one a check, because it does do things I think pretty well in terms of that feedback loop of progression and even changing how you play through the game from beginning to end. We now turn to Aloof, and this is a game that we played on stream. It is a co-op style kind of Puyo Puyo Tetris or that kind of puzzle gameplay. It kind of, in a weird way, also reminds me a little bit of Lovers in a Dangerous Space-Time, just by the fact that we are cooperating with doing something very different. So the concept is that we are exploring this world, and all manner of obstacles and things are going to get in our way. And we're going to have to use the power of Tetris and matching colors in order to survive. So for each level, we are presented with either an enemy that we have to fight, or we have to make specific matches in terms of patterns that will show up. Match 4 or more, and you'll be able to send out an attack or perform a command, where the challenge is that you'll have to synchronize with your friend in terms of setting things up to hit the enemy multiple times, knock out their shields, that kind of thing. And it's a very interesting concept for this kind of gameplay. Now, the issue that Aloof has, as with games of this kind, is that it is very much a what you see is what you get kind of an affair. If you're hoping for additional mechanical growth or new systems, it didn't really show that off. But this is one of those games where it does have versus mode, but you can certainly, I think, mostly, or you'll enjoy it the most in terms of its co-op gameplay. And if you have a friend who you can play it with, I would say definitely give this one a play. In terms of just being a single player experience, I don't know if this kind of design will be interesting enough to see you through all the way to the end. But we did enjoy this one on stream, and it is another really great example of doing something differently when it comes to cooperative style gameplay. But we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we have 3 more games to look at for this spotlight. And as always, if you're interested in my thoughts on design, then check out my offering of books. For entry-level students, we have 20 essential games to study, and then the Game Design Deep Dive series that takes an extensive look at different genres, with free-to-play coming in 2022. For our next game, we have Aluna, Sentinel of the Shards, and this is an ARPG that's kind of built around Latin American mythologies, and I believe according to the store page, off a comic book. But this is an ARPG through and through, as we play as Aluna here, who needs to save the land from evil and reclaim the powers that she's had or that she's lost. Now, the gameplay itself, again, is essentially just pure action RPG. You can't see my health and stuff on the bottom left, but you'll collect various weapons, get different abilities, and you'll grow Aluna in different routes based on how you want to play the game. The level design itself appears to be handmade, at least from what we played of it, and my issue that I had with this one is that it did feel more on the basic side in terms of progression, and especially in terms of the aesthetics. Like the UI, when you go to your inventory, it's just essentially like a black screen with just a few amount of detail there. And I think they could have done a little bit more here just to add to the overall aesthetics. In terms of story and theme, I think Aluna does a really good job in that respect. We really don't see a lot of games based around Latin mythologies and culture, and it's nice to play one that does do things a little bit differently. If you're hoping for something along the same levels of Grim Dawn or Diablo in terms of its ARPG design, and especially in terms of growth and progression, Aluna does not go that far, that in depth. And this feels to be kind of like an above average in terms of its ARPG gameplay. And if you are looking for another game of this genre, I would say check this one out. But if you're hoping for a game that does go above and beyond in terms of the design and stylings, then I don't think this one quite gets there. We now turn to Boy Beats World. This was a game that we played on stream last year, and it's a very solid concept, and I think an underrated gem. So our story is that we are one of the remaining humans on Earth, with everyone else either gone or just a bunch of robots. And in order to save the day, we are going to have to use the power of rhythm and music in order to stop the evil robots. So the game itself, in terms of its general flow here, as you can see, it's all about timing your beats. You can see our character on the upper left kind of bouncing along, and as we time our attacks or our button pressing to the beat, we send out that little like sound wave. Enemies caught in will take damage. As you go through the game, you'll unlock additional abilities that are tied to different button pressing, as well as even beats within beats, which is the extent of my explanation or my musical expertise. The flow of the game itself is essentially going to be go to each new town, kill or stop the evil robots, save the human, move on to the next area, with these kinds of transition points or these transition roads that are the gates between them. There is light progression in terms of using the various items you pick up, as you saw right there, to buy upgrades, such as giving you an extra hit, improving how much damage you do, and so on. Now, the very fact that somebody who is rhythmically challenged, like yours truly here, could play this game definitely speaks to the approachability and accessibility of the game. And if you are really good at timing beats and such, you'll probably get through this game fairly quickly. Now, there are boss fights and additional things you can do as well, but the game itself is not meant to be a huge experience. Now, one thing that I did find fascinating about Boy Beats World is that despite the fact that you would think this would be a linear game, there are some elements of procedural design. Before you get to a boss, you have to kind of run through a gauntlet area, and the gauntlet has enemies randomly placed each time you play. I felt that was an interesting touch. It added a little bit of sense or a little bit more variance or unpredictability to as you get through these areas. Now, with that said, the main thing about Boy Beats World is that what you see is what you get. Again, if you're hoping for a lot of depth or a lot of challenge to this game as you get further in, you're not really going to find it. Some of the boss fights do get fairly interesting, but this is one of those games that it is designed to be kind of a very short, very compact play, and I enjoyed this one. If you enjoy music / rhythm based games at all, do yourself a favor and pick this one up. And even if you are bad at it like myself, you may still find that you're able to play this game thanks to the approachability options and just the general way it's played. For our final game of this episode, this is Game Dev Masters. Now, keep in mind the footage you're seeing is taken from the game in early access and may not represent the current version of it. But this is a game that is basically the business sim surrounding game dev. So if you've ever wanted to try and simulate running a game studio, this is certainly the title for you. Your job is to decide what games you're going to design, how you're going to build them, as well as upgrading your hardware and your own game developer knowledge in order to make the best games possible. And this is all basically factored into how you build your game and what choice you make during development that will raise those stats that you see at the top of the screen. In order to get the best marks, your game needs to hit certain thresholds, which will then impact your rating. And of course, the better your game is, the more people will buy it. As we all know, that's entirely how it works in real life. And the game boasts a very complicated simulation model under the surface in terms of how trends develop, and it's not just you doing the same thing again and again. You have to keep changing what you're building, as well as upping your own progress. And for me, I basically failed, which I hope that's not a sign of the future there. But the big issue that I had with Game Dev Masters and the version that we played, the onboarding is not the best. Due to the multiple layers of simulation and just the complications of how everything works, the game could do a better job of onboarding the player. There are a lot of different sections you can look at. All those little tabs or icons at the bottom of the screen are their own menus. And this is one of those games that in terms of aesthetics, it doesn't really have it at this point. The music reminds you a lot of like all those like 90s like business style games or those professional games as well. But this is one of those titles that if you're looking for kind of the next generation or a new take on the Sim Tycoon style kind of gameplay, I would say give this one a check. You can find the demo on their main site, and again, it has been in development since we've played this game. I'm sure things have been improved or changed since then. But with that said, we're going to wrap up our spotlight here, and as always, I would like to thank the developers who submitted games. If you'd like to submit one for a future stream and video, please reach out. Do all the liking, subscribing, commenting people tell you to do. Check out our Discord and Patreon link down below, and come back for daily discussions on game design here and on game wisdom, where we examine the art and science of games. Until next time, take care.